A few words about our distinguished panelists from this end to the other end. First one is the Texas State Senator Dan Parker, who is also a businessman and entrepreneur, a passionate advocate of strengthening communities and conservative politics and policies. Don Anderson, the next person, he's the founder and chief science officer of Inflection in the Denver metropolitan area, an expert on several aspects of quantum physics. Then is Nick Bronn, quantum algorithm engineer at IBM Quantum, Yorktown Heights, New York State. He creates digital content that enables quantum computing practitioners to achieve their goals. Nate Gemelke, co-founder and chief technology strategist at Quera Computing, Greater Boston. His passion is quantum computing, information, and many-body physics. Then is Stanwyck, senior product manager for quantum computing software at NVIDIA, and Sam holds a PhD in applied physics from Stanford University. Anubhav Sahu at RF Circuits and Systems Division at Hypress, working on cryo-cooled products incorporating various superconductors. As Olga said this morning, we look to the panelists for guidance on the best steps that the state government, industry, and academia need to take to strengthen Texas as the leader in quantum technologies. Is it coming from here? I don't know.
Feedback.
Quantum effect.
Yeah. You have already heard that Texas is in a very enviable position in several areas of quantum technologies, but we are looking for guidance on all other areas, including, of course, quantum computing. I will request the panelists each to take no more than 5 minutes to present their remarks. I'll keep the time. After that, we will open the meeting for a general discussion and question and answer sessions. Thank you very much. Senator, you go first.
Very good. Well, that's a different way to start a conference, right? The panel discussion.
Good.
Well, what an honor to be with all of you. Always wonderful to be here at Texas A&M. And my oldest daughter is an alum of A&M, and my youngest daughter is currently a junior here on campus, and so it's always great to be here at such an incredible institution. Look, I think we have enormous opportunities with regard to quantum and what Texas can do to lead America forward in this space. My viewpoint is that I always want Texas to be second to none. I want Texas to drive innovation and to drive capability so that, frankly, we can be always the home of ingenuity and all the major breakthroughs that will keep our economy strong and vibrant going forward. I think quantum is one of these extraordinary opportunities. From a legislative perspective, this session we worked on a lot of major topics, including AI and cyber, and of course quantum, this quantum initiative that we've now put in place, that's now the law of the land here in Texas, signed into effect by Governor Abbott, that went into effect now here as of September the 1st. And that whole initiative really requires us to be able to make investment ultimately. And I think it's a unique role for government because in my assessment, while there are lots of very exciting applications for quantum, particularly in areas like healthcare and material sciences and many, many other areas, it's going to take a little bit more time for all of the various private sector business opportunities with quantum to be able to financially model out. And as a result of that, that's where really the role for government, and in particular the Texas government, I think is opening up for us to be the driver of public-private partnerships and to make certain, frankly, that our research Tier 1 institutions have access to quantum computing. I think that will unleash incredible innovation, incredible new opportunities for the people of Texas that I'm so blessed to be able to serve. So I think that we're on the cusp of this golden age. When you look at what's happening with AI and then to be able to expand it and strengthen it with quantum computing, going from classical computing to quantum will be absolutely extraordinary. And Texas has to lead. And I'll say this, the only way that the United States will be able, in my assessment, to exert, if you will, strength and hegemonic influence globally in a world where we have real adversaries, China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, I view quantum, frankly, as the space race of our time. And so I don't want to overly regulate nor overly prescribe what that looks like going forward. I just know that America must dominate in this space, that Texas A&M and our other wonderful Tier 1 universities in Texas must drive that innovation alongside the private enterprise in this room, all the incredible entrepreneurs that will fuel the future, because at the end of the day, the only way that we're successful and you're able to exert peace through strength globally is through technology innovation that is second to none. This is a national security priority for the United States, and Texas must lead in that regard. And so for those reasons and many, many more, I couldn't be more excited and blessed to work on this topic alongside all of you. Thank you for your interest in it, and I look forward to the discussion here this morning. Again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Senator. Dana, your turn.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here at Texas, at Texas A&M. To give you a little background, I received my PhD from Marlin Scully a long, long time ago. And a long, long time ago, I founded this company now called Inflection. That was back in 2007, because we felt that quantum technology was going to change the world. And you heard some superb talks today about the science, a lot of the science of quantum technology. A lot of people ask, when will we see quantum advantage? From my point of view, quantum advantage is actually already here. And why is it important? For example, quantum advantage can be brought to a world in which we are not so vulnerable in GPS. GPS is going to be one of the first lights to go out in any kind of conflict, for example. It's fairly vulnerable. Quantum technology can provide a robust means of mitigating that vulnerability. Being able to navigate, drive autonomous vehicles without being spoofed or interfered with. That's the kind of other quantum advantage we can expect, quite apart from the quantum advantage we hope to have out of quantum computing. In addition to that, things like detecting very weak radio frequency signals, one can do with quantum advantage with quantum technology. So you will see more and more the applications of quantum revealed to you. They're actually already up there, some of them, but more and more. For example, you heard from Junyi today about clocks. I can't help but many of you might have looked at your wristwatch and say, do I really need to know what time it is, just so many digits? But the national security impact of knowing what time it is to such great precision is beyond what you can believe. Also, even the security, for example, of our electric grid depends on having very good timing. We all rely on our smartphones for the GPS time, what happens when GPS goes out. So the economic impact of quantum technology is vast, actually already today. And in compute, it's going to be still more enormous. My colleague next to me, I'm sure will have plenty to say about that. In fact, several colleagues next to me will have plenty to say about quantum compute, so I'm emphasizing a bit more about other than compute. And by the way, this is also university. This is about academics in this arena. And I want to say, what about the workforce? Just a couple of words. Many people think that I need quantum engineers. My company needs quantum engineers, quantum scientists. We do. But what we need overwhelmingly is quantum-informed workforce. Quantum-informed, whether it's in engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and so on, but also, for that matter, in accounting, in sales, in business development. I love the sign that I saw here. It says, if you're a thought leader, you're in sales. I don't know how many of you saw that, have seen that sign on the Texas A&M campus. That is correct. If you want to promote the business of quantum and you're a thought leader, sales is key, and you need to be quantum familiar. So there's enormous workforce opportunities, not just in solving Schrodinger's equation, but in simply understanding the impact of quantum. And I am thrilled that the US has invested very heavily in taking the impact of, future impact of quantum in terms of national security, in terms of economic security, very, very seriously, because this is leadership we are not going to give away. We're going to command it. We're going to lead this, both all the way from academics. I was trained in quantum optics, all the way up to business of making the huge impact, also economically, in this new technological as well as scientific arena. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick?
It's a pleasure to be here, invited here to the Texas Quantum Summit, and I thank Texas A&M for the hospitality they've extended, and I'm honored to be on this panel with the Senator and the rest of my quantum colleagues. At IBM, our mission is to bring useful quantum computing to the world, and so in doing that, we try to lower the barrier to entry for everyone to be able to use this new kind of computing resource. So for example, we currently have 13 deployed systems of more than 100 qubits each available for our clients around the world. And in fact, each of you, any user who's not even paying us, we give you 10 minutes of quantum access away for free each month. We are so dedicated to the idea of getting the world informed about quantum through educational resources. We have a great learning platform on our IBM website, on our Qiskit YouTube, for example, so much so that we have more than 600,000 users of our systems. We've published even more than 3,000 scientific papers using IBM quantum resources. We're so dedicated to building this that we even constructed an open source software framework called Qiskit, which according to the Unitary Foundation is the preferred development language of 74% of quantum developers and has 7,400 dependencies on it. So that is the current situation right now. What we're looking to build actually is, we know, as we've heard today, that quantum computing is not going to replace classical computing at all. There's a lot of things that quantum computers aren't very good at, but there's a lot of things that they're very good at. So we see a future in which quantum processing units interact with other kinds of processing, such as CPUs and GPUs, in order to find the best kind of solutions for pressing problems of national security and industry. So in that, we are starting to integrate our quantum processing units currently with Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in upstate New York and with the Riken Scientific Institute in Japan, integrating these quantum resources in a data center in which they can interact with GPUs and CPUs in order so that we can find the most hybrid or heterogeneous computing solutions, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to bring to the customer is the answer. In the long term, we do have a roadmap to provide error correction. Our current systems are noisy, and I can go into detail if you're interested in it, but just to summarize, we're promising 200 logical qubits with the capability of running 100 million operations by the end of the decade. What I think that the Texas government and academia can offer in general is actually basically, Dana kind of took the words out of my mouth. If you think about the industry in Texas, let's say the energy sector, for example, you go to a chemistry class where you're talking about developing catalysts for petrochemical processing, or you go to a material science class talking about different kinds of materials for solar energy provision. How many of those courses are integrated with quantum so that you're able to take the methods and techniques that are developed over the past few decades and apply them to a quantum computer to get actually better answers out of the computing cluster of the future? So my kind of challenge is to integrate integrate quantum into all the other domain expertise that are typically trained by all these fine universities in Texas in order to make them compatible with the quantum processors or quantum-enabled processors of the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick?
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this distinguished panel, and We've heard a lot of wonderful things about scaling up quantum here today. I do want to say that I do have a PhD in physics. I did not get it from Marlon Scully. I feel like I'm the only person in the room that did not. But that really speaks strongly to the history of quantum in Texas. And we heard some fascinating talks this morning from Jun Yi, from Misha Lukin, a colleague of mine that helped start query computing. So I probably won't go into the sales pitch on query computing quite so much because I think Misha did a great job of that. And just to prove that there's thought leadership across disciplines, and I think the room is full of thought leaders here in quantum. The thing that I do want to point out is that translation of ideas between different kinds of disciplines, not just in science, but to technology translation and to the broader impact of economic development around emerging technologies, things like that. One of the concepts that physicists love to talk about, if you go down into the Juni's lab, I'm sure as an early graduate student, you will get a lecture about dynamic range. Dynamic range is really about how big can something be versus how small can something be? How can we link those things together? Juni used the concept of measuring time at a part in 10 to the 20. That's linking big things to small things. That is a pervasive concept in quantum computing, quantum sensing, timekeeping. But I also want to point out that dynamic range is an important idea in economic development. Economic development is all about growing things. We are in the great state of Texas. Things can get very large. I mean, I go to a lot of these kind of venues, and this is Texas's first quantum summit, if I understand right. We're talking about forging leadership, but this is the biggest summit of this type that I've been to in a single state. So I have to say, this is already off to a bang. Yeah, I mean, I think the applause are definitely warranted. But on the topic of dynamic range and scaling things up and making them Texas big, one of the big things that we have to do in technology translation is try to figure out how to connect the very small start that we have in quantum technologies to the very big impact that we want to have on the world. And I think that one has to be very careful about how you do that. You don't just go make something small and make something big. You have to connect the two together. And I think the way that we need to do that is exactly what's happening in this room right now, is we're bringing the right types of people together and we're getting that information to flow. There were some really wonderful remarks in the last few talks that we heard about that technology, engineering, and science kind of interplay. That is exactly the heart of the problem that we need to solve. And I think one of the things that this panel should talk about over this next hour is really how do we do that effectively? How do we make the right size step? And how do we connect the right types of people together? Texas has an unusual ability and opportunity here to connect that in the right way, make the right size step, make responsible investments that bring back impact to the state of Texas, and hopefully keep those impacts in the state of Texas where the original investments were made as well. And you need good partners to do that. And I think all the companies here that are represented want to be that great partner in that process, Query included. And I think we should talk about exactly how to do that.
Thank you. Sam.
I'd like to also start by saying, I'm honored to be here today and honored to be on this panel with a lot of other great panelists. It's great to see Texas starting to invest in quantum computing, and it's clear, just from today that Texas has, all the tools and the will to lead in quantum and help America lead in quantum, which is great. So at NVIDIA, we're a little bit different than the other companies on this stage. We don't build our own quantum computer and compete with these companies. Our goal is to help all of them be more successful. And what we do have is a lot of experience in taking a new accelerated computing technology and making it wildly successful and making it something that everyone can benefit from. And creating the conditions for researchers to achieve the breakthroughs that need to happen on that technology, and creating the conditions for startups to be more and more successful. So we've seen with starting with CUDA. When I joined NVIDIA, people mostly thought of us as a graphics company. CUDA made it so if you knew how to program in C or knew how to program in Python, you could use a GPU for for scientific computing, and it changed supercomputing. And it turned out that it was actually a lot of government investment in HPC that directly led to the software and the tools being built for the AI breakthroughs that we've seen in the last decade. So in quantum, we're trying to repeat this. We heard already quantum computers are not going to stand alone. They're going to integrate with supercomputers as we know them today, CPUs and GPUs, and create a more powerful supercomputer that can solve more problems. And so we are building the tools to help realize that. For GPUs, CUDA was really critical in democratizing GPU computing. We've built a platform called CUDA-Q, which is open source and QPU agnostic, that enables a researcher to program any quantum computer together with GPUs and CPUs as part of a supercomputer. We've also built tools for simulating quantum computers for the purposes of algorithms development and processor design. And we're now working on accelerating quantum error correction, which is the big bottleneck standing between where we are today and the million qubit large-scale fault-tolerant quantum computers we want to get to. And we're doing this in partnership with the whole community. So we build software that can be integrated into everybody else's software or can be used by researchers to do what they need to do. So I think for Texas, there's already a great plan. And I really like the senator's comments. It's about creating the conditions for researchers to achieve these breakthroughs without being too prescriptive, and creating the conditions for startups to want to come here and do their work. And so, we look forward to seeing that happen in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Anubhav, yeah.
Hi, I'm Anubhav Sahu. I'm from Hyprus, and I also want to thank Dr. Olga for inviting me over here. My background is from superconducting circuits, and I've been in this field for almost 25 years, developing superconducting circuits. And right now in Hyprus, we build receiver systems based on superconducting circuits for defense applications. These systems are still not deployed on the field, but yes, they are being used in different laboratories. Regarding my prognosis about digital computing versus quantum computing, I think digital computing will stay dominant for general purpose computing for near future or maybe forever. But the quantum computing will definitely have a specific application, and as other panelists said, that it can be used along with the other CPUs, GPUs, and that way hybridizing the system will make a very good a very good supercomputer. Anyway, speaking about the challenges, I think we still have our challenges for the development of the quantum computer. And as I mentioned, my background is from superconducting circuits. Back in 90s, we thought that we will build a classical cryogenic computer based on superconducting circuits. Superconducting circuits have an inherent advantage of speed and energy efficiency. So people thought that Moore's law will hit a wall, and we will take the advantage of the speed of the superconducting electronics and develop the superconducting circuits. Anyway, what happened was, this was back in the late 90s and 2000, but digital computing or the semiconductor industry always had the advantage of investment. They had an advantage of developing a lot of different architectures, billions of dollars of investments, facilities, so many people working, and eventually people gave up on the superconducting classical computers. Back then again in 2013, there was a program from IARPA which started, and in that program was called C3. It is cryogenic computing complexity. where IARPA funded around like 100 million or something to develop a computing based computer. And the idea was to use the energy efficiency, that it will be highly energy efficient and an advantage. But again, the funds were not enough. It requires a lot of ecosystem around it, and that ecosystem was not developed. The fabrication was not very, very good, and eventually that program also ended back in 2018. Why I'm mentioning all this thing is that the quantum computing will face the same task. Right now, the companies are, I think this effort is now around like 20 to 25 years old. I mean, serious effort to develop a quantum computer. And in next 4 years, I think Google and IBM are predicting that they will develop some kind of a fault-tolerant quantum computer. But the digital computing, there will be investment, and there will be a lot of investment in digital computing. As we heard from NVIDIA and IBM yesterday, that there is some kind of a collaboration, and they are again starting some kind of a hybrid computing using x86 architecture along with GPU. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the quantum computing has challenges, and it will need a lot of funds, a lot of efforts, and the ecosystem which is required to develop the quantum computing needs to be developed. But when I say about the ecosystem, I mean the cryogenic systems, the cryogenic packaging, and these quantum test beds. These test beds are very expensive. They have to be brought down. Anything regarding cryogenic packaging, like paraamps, LNAs, cryogenic LNAs, they are very expensive. The cryogenic LNAs, I know they cost like $3,000, $5,000, and you need hundreds of them, even for few hundred qubits quantum computer. So what I'm saying is that here in Texas, if the effort is also to focus on the ecosystem which is required to build the quantum computer, like the cryogenic systems, packaging, interconnects, paraamps, I think that should be the focus for the development of this field. I think I am done.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that the panelists were very concise, and they have left us some time for questions. And you have heard some very inspiring words and thoughts coming from all the way from you to the other end. So I invite all of you to ask any question you may have. May I say a word or two? And if you have a directed question to one of the panelists, please mention that. Otherwise, we will see which of the panelists would like to answer the question you might raise. Yes, sir.
And like gold rushes, The guaranteed way to move things forward is you don't know for sure where to dig, and we're digging in various places. Optical quantum computing, superconducting computing, quantum dot qubits, which is going to win out? Well, I'll tell you what's going to help all of them, better picks and shovels. Okay, we need to, and we've got an opportunity between Canon in Austin and my little company, Stanwyck Labs, to develop.
Thank you, sir. You made a really great point. Is there anyone here who wants to elaborate on this? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right, especially for Texas and with its long and very strong history in manufacturing semiconductors. The manufacturing infrastructure for quantum technology, regardless of which modality you like, is very immature. And what I'd like you to think about is this. It's very hard to think this way. Everything that's as cool as all get out that you saw today and you see around in quantum, it's extremely primitive, extremely primitive. And we are trying to move from extremely primitive to the modern. It's not primitive, I mean, as I say, it is state of the art. But you need to think that in 10 years and 20 years, it's going to be wholly different, just as with transistors back in the 50s, wholly different. And Texas wants to be there to make that happen. And most of that needs to happen through manufacturing capability, as an example. So very good point. Again, extremely different modalities have different manufacturing demands, infrastructure needs. I think Texas is positioned to address a lot of them in principle, to dig in lots of places, so to speak. But I think you're absolutely right about those needs and what Texas can excel at.
What do you think are the physics constraints?
What do I think about physics constraints?
Yes.
There are physics. I mean, that's why we have theorists who calculate things like how well can we. This is inflection works with atoms. All right, so different than my neighbors, but how well can you hold an atom in place? There's quantum noise, et cetera, ultimately. So understanding those physics constraints are crucial. But I will say, really, at the moment, in terms of infrastructure, I'd call that preparation and infrastructure constraints, it's just not there. Eventually, we'll run into physics constraints of how well we can place everything, but having something go out in the field, go in space, go on a car, that's what's going to happen in the future. We're a long way from the physical limits, but we are definitely on the verge of infrastructure manufacturing limits already today.
Do you have some thoughts on how it might be accelerated?
I'll let somebody else. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, anyone on the panel.
I'll comment from my perspective. Look, I don't disagree. I think there's tremendous value to be created from manufacturing excellence in this space. And so when I think about investment from the state perspective, let's get to the chase. Government plays a unique role, which is regard to sparking some of this to get things moving. Ultimately, we need to get out of the way and allow the private sector to drive. But I do believe outside of getting a tier one institution that does such great research and development like A&M, access to quantum computers, I think the other great opportunity we can provide is to help seed and support this manufacturing ecosystem in the state of Texas. So that's my view. If you think about what we've done legislatively and passing this new bill that's now gone into effect as of September 1st, it's about getting rid of all the silos. It's about better integration. It's about drawing down federal dollars so that we can be more effective collectively, right? But when you look at academia, when you look at the private sector, look at government, government by far and away is the least important of the three. And so we need to play our role and then, like I said, get out of the way. But we can certainly make manufacturing a priority when it comes to how we look at the allocation of investment, I guess is what I would say.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Where is the question coming from?
This is me. I have a question related to quantum-informed workforce. Senator and Dana mentioned the need for the quantum-informed workspace. I want to highlight a point and ask a question. You know, many times, quantum is a scientific phenomenon or can it be social phenomenon? You see, data science and machine learning has been there last 20 years. It didn't take off. AI didn't take off. But when ChatGPT came, it became a social phenomenon. It started taking off. Even for some folks, Hadoop, there was a distributed computing technology. It didn't take off, but it took off when the cloud came. In the same way, I told to someone, hey, is quantum, they're asking, is it new? Another. It's a AI is new, and quantum is maybe another new technology. But when you say, hey, there is MRI machine, which was there in 1970s, which is a quantum. But anyway, question to you is, how can we bridge the gap? How can we make this a social phenomenon? Because quantum is not just quantum computing. There are a lot of ecosystem around it. Senator Honor is compared to space race, which I totally agree. At the time, all the leaders took the confidence of the public so that everyone is excited about the space race. Like that, how can we make the quantum-informed workspace? How can we excite them? How everyone can involve rather than just it be a quantum scientific phenomenon? How can we?
Thank you.
I think that we need Senator Parker to get people excited. I think that he needs to find a way to communicate what June is doing in his lab to people in Texas. And if that is done right and well, what you'll see is answers to the last question about manufacturing and how do we apply precision manufacturing to quantum have real answers. When they have real answers, they will drive real success. When you start seeing that real success, and Senator Parker has done his job of communicating also to his constituents, what does that success mean for Texas, then we'll understand what those achievements mean. Getting to the moon was kind of obvious because you look in the sky and there's the moon, right? Quantum technologies is a little bit harder to figure it out. You're looking at the very small. We can't see the very small very easily. But if we can translate those ideas into things that really have meaning for people in their daily lives, then we can do that. These kinds of forums are the places where we figure out how to do that. We start planning how to do that. Having the right kinds of people at the table to do that. Senator Parker is an important part of that process, so are many of you in the room. But figuring out how do we tell that story so that when those successes happen, and those successes, I have to say, those successes need to be real. And I think that is one of the things that is most challenging about how we do this. But if we are going to hit the point where we hit that dynamic range of scale, where this is really an impactful thing for humanity, we are going to be manufacturing things. But how do we get to that point? That's point C. We're at point A. What is point B? And I think that's what we're here to figure out.
Yeah, no, I think, first of all, I accept the challenge, so thank you, Nathan, for that. And I agree, and I know my colleagues, I think, in the legislature would agree with me as well about it's incumbent on us in an elected official capacity to raise awareness and to let people understand the roadmap where we're going and what the implications are. And so that's multifaceted. Yes, it's talking about appropriate investment, but it's also talking about what are all the downstream implications and benefits to our workforce, right? What does the quantum age mean for the Texas workforce of a 31 million people population today? It's going to be incredible what it means in the future. It'll create tremendous new jobs and amazing opportunities. What does that translate to for an ROI for the taxpayer making an investment on the front end? What is the economic development benefit of industry being birthed, so to speak, at real scale? These are exciting things that not only play to strengthening our national security and how we protect this country and the world for that matter, and the fact that Texas, as it always has, will play a very unique and disproportionate role in the future of a strong America to be able to compete globally and address these national security issues as well as all the amazing opportunities for mankind that are in the industry sector. When we think about all the amazing new materials that will be constructed, all the new science breakthroughs and proteins and everything else that will be amazing because of the use of quantum. We just need to get out there and tell this story. And so having a summit like this with so many participants really is fabulous. You need to be talking about this today on social media. You need to put it on social media all over the place that Texas is leading, that we've had a world-class summit. You've got the greatest minds in the world here on this side of the table talking about these issues and throughout the room. And that's what needs to be told so that we raise awareness in the public consciousness of this state and this nation in order to give it the scale that it needs for the future.
Very, very nice to see. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think it's very nicely said. When I was a graduate student, by the way, all of my colleagues in graduate school went to work for oil and gas industry. That's true. That was back in about 1975. Oh, gosh. Today, it is really stunning. If I were a graduate student, all my colleagues would be going to work for quantum companies. The world has changed, and I will tell you that there is not a single sector of modern technology that won't be impacted by quantum technology in the future sometime or other. Some sooner, some later, but that's what's going to happen. So my view of the social is indeed about jobs and the workforce. It's going to be overwhelming. We all compete with our hiring, all the people on the right side of the senator. We're all competing, and there's not enough people around to come and work for our companies. Texas is going to change that, I hope.
Absolutely.
Is there any other question? Yeah, I see a hand there. Yeah.
I've got the microphone here.
All right.
The line's right here.
I guess you win because you have the microphone.
Hi there. I'm Gibson Armstrong from TREC. We build open architecture quantum computing systems. And Senator, as a former state representative myself, I'm glad to see people like yourself in policy who get quantum and who are passionate about it. My question for you is this. As we're in a race against totalitarian regimes, what are our strengths and how do we play to those strengths to make sure that we win?
Well, it's a great question, and thank you, first of all, for your service. We're very, very grateful for that. Look, when you reference the adversaries in the world and what we're dealing with, we win because those other regimes are all about control. They want to control the human being. They want to control every aspect of one's lives. And we in the West, in the United States in particular, constitutionally, in our framework and the way that we operate, are all about inspiring the individual to maximize liberty and freedom at every turn. And so our adversaries in some ways use our open society against us, as you well know. But in this case, because we have such incredibly great intellectual horsepower in our major institutions of learning, like Texas A&M, here on this very campus, the men and women here on this dais that are driving innovation in their private sector enterprises, unlike anywhere else in the world. We are driven by free markets and free enterprise. And that is a huge, huge differentiator that will drive success. Because ultimately, that's the only way that real innovation will occur and that it can be sustainable, is if you have these free market principles that are driving it. This is why I do think it's appropriate for Texas government and federal government entities to talk about seeding investment, but then it's important for us to get out of the way and allow the private sector and academia to develop these amazing technologies. And as I said earlier, we need to realize that the regulatory framework with regard to quantum will be very, very important to our future. I don't want to send all of you on this dais and all of you in this room into this global competition with your hands tied behind your back. That would be a mistake. Because look at the lessons of history. When you have an authoritarian regime, or even those that are in the Western world, that they have overly regulated, Western Europe in particular with regard to the internet in the 1990s. What happened, looking at the lessons of history? The United States dominated the internet space. More entrepreneurs launched companies, more jobs were created, more economic growth, more expansion of our overall economy because of the fact that we took the right regulatory framework. Europe put too many controls on. And so those are the lessons that will uniquely separate the way that we drive innovation in collaboration with one another. Now, when it comes to the workforce, for a moment, I want to comment on what Dr. Anderson said. We need to make certain that we are hearing from you all in industry. Industry needs to be working closely with academia. That's why I'm thrilled that we're doing this today at Texas A&M, and not in some isolated area, because we've got to drive this integration between the two. And back in 2021, I was the author of something called the Texas Reskilling and Upskilling Initiative. And for the first time, we put real money behind this concept of collaboration between vocational schools and community colleges in particular, and the needs of the business community. That's got to be scaled up now for our four-year institutions as well, but it's a great model for how we can work to address the needs that are there intelligently. Again, getting government out of the way. I want to help facilitate the dialogue and get out of the way, because you're the experts. The experts are in corporate America, the entrepreneurs that will put capital at stake for these new ideas that will drive innovation. And again, let's remember this in terms of why we are so superior to these authoritarian regimes. From the very founding of our country, when you look at the basis of federalism, what did our founding fathers believe? The founding fathers believed in this country that our states compete as engines of laboratories of growth and innovation. Not a broken, bloated, command and control centralized government, but the states drive innovation. That's what's going to happen with the private sector here in Texas, working appropriately with academia and the Texas government as well. And so that's the future and why I'm so excited about it. But we need to look to your question to understand what those authoritarian regimes are doing, what the lessons of history are, and what uniquely makes us different. But I think those items that I kind of showcased, hopefully you would agree with me, are what truly will propel us to greater success and to win this. Because at the end of the day, the future of humanity depends on our success. The stakes could not be higher.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. My name is Rashmi Varma, and I have a startup, a quantum startup, and now working on putting together a private equity firm to actually fund quantum. The one issue that we startups have is, a regular VC model doesn't invest well in a quantum startup because our turnaround time is pretty long. So the ROI required, and it can't be done in about 5 to 7 years. It's a 10+ year kind of a long shot. But to that, my question to Senator Parker, if you could tell us a little bit about the Quantum Commission that you guys are putting together, when is it going to be online? And what's the kind of funding that the Texas Quantum Initiative is putting together as on behalf of the state of Texas? Mainly, how do we compete with the hubs in Chicago and Maryland? Or rather, how do we even collaborate with that? What does TQI provide us in terms of, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, a private investor in this field?
Thank you for the question, and I will definitely answer it here. I want to allow our other panelists to get engaged in some of these things. You've got some of the greatest thought leaders in the country right here as well on some of these topics. But let me just say this, and they may have further comment. Look, as a guy that involves my private life, the way I'm able to support my family over the years as a citizen lawmaker is doing venture capital and private equity work. And so I understand the scarcity of capital, and I understand that it is the entrepreneur's greatest challenge is getting access to capital when you're in those early stages of development. There's no question about it. I understand it very, very much. One of the things at a big picture level, I'll tell you just very quickly that I'm excited about, one of the great things I had the honor of working on this session in addition to quantum is our capital markets package here in Texas. Not only, I think, will you see over the next 10 years that Texas will be the leading red state in America for finance, but will be, I believe, the capital of finance for America in the next 10 to 15 years. We're going to give New York a heck of a run. And the reason I say that is because the Texas Stock Exchange will be up and running in the first quarter of 2026, along with the New York and the NASDAQ satellites. I've been very blessed to be a part of all of this and getting it up off the ground and create the legislative framework to have access to capital markets. Access to additional capital markets will provide additional liquidity for early stage companies of all kinds in all industries in all domains. Specific to your question, what I would say is this. The vision that Representative Capriglio and I had in creating this quantum initiative is to be widespread in the charter of what we try to accomplish. We are trying to make certain that, one, the first goal is I want to make certain that our Tier 1 universities have access, as I said earlier, to quantum computers first and foremost, so they can work and create tremendous things. Great breakthroughs will happen in our universities when they have access to the quantum computing. Secondly, I want to address targeted critical areas where we need support. We talked about manufacturing, precision manufacturing. That'll be vitally important. Then we need these experts here on this dais to give us guidance, along with all the other experts in the room, on what are the other critical areas that we need to focus and target. And just like we've created initiatives like CPRIT, the Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas, DPRIT, which is the newest thing we did in 2025, this is the Dementia Prevention Institute of Texas, we put real capital, $3 billion in each of those initiatives, doing multiple things. CPRIT, for example, funds Nobel Prize winners and great research. It also provides access to clinical trials, and it also provided capital for companies that were promising to have access to support that might not otherwise be there. And again, we don't want to do that on a permanent basis. You want to do it for a finite period of time to allow the venture capital community to understand that quantum is alive and well in Texas and that there'll be enormous opportunities. But at the end of the day, your excellence as an entrepreneur, coupled with the excellence of academic institutions like A&M, and all the other things that are happening in this ecosystem of quantum in Texas, are what will drive capital, these VCs coming from New York, coming from Silicon Valley, to realize that the real opportunities, the most creative, brightest minds in the space are here in Texas. So that's the goal, that's where we're going, and my hope is that going forward we'll have real funding for this initiative on behalf of the state of Texas that helps us propel this vision forward.
Thank you.
And it's a tall order to follow the senator, which is why I think we're all being quiet, but I'll jump in. At NVIDIA, we also see the success of startups as absolutely critical to the success of quantum computing and critical to our mission. And so we have programs to provide as much GPU compute as we can to startups, as much AI capability as we can. And we also partner with supercomputing centers and states to offer even more. So through supercomputing centers and through states, we've now provided millions of hours of GPU computing to startups. And so if you or anyone in the room needs that, come talk to me.
But let me add one more thing. The universities themselves can do an enormous amount to catalyze startups. The University of Colorado, I believe, has more startups than any other state in the country because of their technology transfer office. Chicago is probably the most aggressive and so far successful, but Texas is going to leapfrog them. Chicago is largely successful because they have a very healthy and promoted startup community. So it's about licensing, it's about IP, it's about encouraging, it's about providing office space, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to see startups take off and seed investors, angels, VCs invest, very much it will be cultivated by how the university deals with technology transfer.
And with the diminished eloquence of a scientist, just a constant degrading there. There is one observation that I want to just make. All of these hubs that you asked about in particular, and then with relevance to how Texas is scaling things up, if you look at the level of engagement between the venture community and the government and the universities and then the small companies, when it is very high at the beginning, that's when you have the most success. And if you study how each of those launched, the ones that went, basically government went straight out to the venture community and said, we are going to develop a competency in this area and we need your help, that is when things really took off the best. So your question is evidence, I think, that Texas, your question to the senator, is evidence that Texas has an opportunity here to do it the right way. And just studying the data, we have the benefit of a few years of hindsight here as others have spun up. Using that benefit of hindsight, I think this is a good sign for success. So you guys need to continue this conversation after this panel is over.
Absolutely, totally agree. One other comment I want to make very briefly in this, that is this. If you think about Texas and our investment climate historically, what sector has driven so much of our investment and so forth in this state has been our oil and gas sector. The family offices in Texas, our biggest family offices that go back a century of success in the oil patch. Now you have the next generation of these incredible families that are legacy players that have been very successful in oil and gas that are now starting to look at what are the future investment opportunities. It gets back to the question earlier about how we raise awareness, the public relations piece about quantum being such a big opportunity. We need to convert all of those hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that are invested by those kind of family offices right here uniquely in Texas into these new technologies like quantum. That's a challenge to those incredible family offices and legacy families that have done so much for this country and so much for this state. But I think it's also an amazing opportunity for them to get excited about the future of this space and quantum in particular.
We may have time for one short question now. Yeah.
Okay, hello. My name is Chris Marvel. So my question is, I'm an assistant professor at a smaller university, and we're looking at how we want to implement quantum because we understand for every 40 engineers, we make one physicist, right? And physicists learn quantum, but engineers kind of end their history of physics at like 1890. And we're looking at workshops, looking at writing a course, looking at whether an interdisciplinary master's makes sense. So I'd like to hear from industry what your perspectives are. And also to the senator, I'll say we're looking to the legislature as well for guidance on what we should be trying to do to prepare them, as far as bringing in high school students for summer camps, bringing in research experience for undergraduates, things like that.
I'll grab this
Thank
one.
you. As a general question towards workforce development in quantum, I think that's...
No, this isn't general. This is very specific, actually. And I think this is one of the opportunities in Texas. I'm actually a Midwestern state school trained engineer who later found science. So my engineering education did not end at 1890, just for reference there. I think the state schools do much better modern job of teaching skills, and I think that Texas A&M probably is a good example of that in all of the state engineering schools in Texas. But I do think that this is an important part of how all of this works, and to this kind of cultural shift of knowledge from science into engineering and then into even things like manufacturing. How do we achieve that? I think the state schools and the engineering departments have a very critical role to play there, and Texas A&M has a very specific opportunity there to convert engineers into modern understanding of quantum technologies, which actually, quantum sounds very fancy and very hard, but to be honest with you, it is just a stupid pet trick that allows us to make new technologies. And what engineers are very good at is understanding that, learning that very quickly, and then applying engineering processes to create products and to create impact on the world. I think Texas in particular has an opportunity to contribute there. And I think if we figure out how to do that, and your question again is evidence to the likely future success of this endeavor that we're all here to do, we need to keep the dialogue up, and we need to just explain, how do we get that curricula developed? How do we make sure that your department is successful in rolling that out? And it is probably true that we are going to need 40-to-1 ratio of engineers at some point, and it's going to take time to do that. We are probably late in starting. So I think it's good that we're here, and it's good that we're discussing this, but we all have a role to play in making that actually happen.
Yeah.
I'd like to follow that up, actually, if I could. So, there's a lot of problems that are common in scientific disciplines and the engineering disciplines. Say I want to, you're probably solving a lot of differential equations, you're probably diagonalizing a lot of matrices. Well, there's quantum ways of doing those problems. And I don't think those kinds of quantum solutions are being taught. The algorithms for those are actually still being in development. There are ones we know of, for example, that will work on future fault-tolerant systems, but will they work on something that we have maybe in the next few years that could affect the students' careers? So that's where I want to see, kind of the intersection of how do we bring quantum computing to the engineering discipline so that it's just another tool in your toolbox.
It's that time of the day when we should close the session. I want to really show my appreciation to all the panelists for having fielded all your questions so thoroughly and so well, especially the senator. And so let's do that. And to those of you who had questions for the panel, I appreciate a lot and your patience all over the place. And we really hope this will bring about a renaissance of quantum technologies in the state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the session is closed.